This is going to be my second last episode of the series, Freedom Loss Living in an Illusion. In the previous episode, we learned about emotions and how they are generated. We also discovered that our emotions vary depending on our survival mechanism. For instance, one group of people may experience intense guilt, while another group may not feel it at all. Therefore, it would be inaccurate to assume that we experience all emotions equally across different survival mechanisms. In today's episode, we will be discussing a very interesting topic that often entangles us without our knowledge, leaving us feeling trapped and unable to find a way out. The topic for today's podcast is Self Sabotage. By this time, I assume you have understood your survival mechanism and also the self and how emotions play its role in shaping our lives. In all of the past podcasts, I have explained that we are, in fact, living in a freedom that is illusionary in nature. Let me recap it for you. In the first podcast on goals, we are somebody else's goal, and our purpose is predefined, and then how we go about fulfilling others' expectation. You also know how we tend to behave as others' property, and our decision is influenced by others, which also implies that others govern our destiny. I have also explained to you how two systems, survival mechanism and the self, control our lives, and how core beliefs and emotions play a role in impacting our lives. Today, you're going to learn about how we are caught in a web known as self-sabotage, which also can be termed as catch-22. There are several idioms that convey the same meaning, such as caught between a rock and a hard surface, or caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. A simple way to understand a catch-22 is damned if you do or damned if you don't. Either way, you are trapped. Many times, unconsciously and indirectly, we get entangled and trapped in this web in our lives. All of us struggle to come out of this prison and gain our freedom. We apply all our energies to liberate ourselves from its clutches. But the more we fight using our might, the more we get sucked deeper into its vortex. Most often, it generates negative emotions such as anger, guilt, sadness, panic, anxiety, depression, etc. At times, it looks like we have won the battle, set ourselves free, but patterns continue to repeat in our lives at a regular interval. Today, we are going to talk about your internal driver, how the mechanism works within you. What is self-sabotage? Self-sabotage is a combination of two words, self and sabotage. In one of my previous podcasts, I explained to you what self is, and I assume you know, or you can listen to the earlier podcast. What is sabotage? An act of damaging, destroying, or preventing something deliberately so that the outcome is not fulfilled. The act of self-sabotage is also known as the self, preventing you from achieving your desired goals, dreams, relationship, and progress in life the way you want it to be fulfilled. By this time, you know that your survival mechanism is under the control of the self. It has to fulfill the purpose predefined. If you deviate from the defined outcome of the self and focus on your goals, then it will sabotage your dreams somehow. As long as your goals are in alignment with that of the self, then there is no threat of self-sabotage. Let's look at the dynamics of these two mechanisms so that you understand its working. Let me give you an example. Bipin, an entrepreneur, buys a truck whose load capacity is 10 tons. He hires a driver to drive the vehicle and do business. The driver had two responsibilities. On both fronts, he was accountable. The primary responsibility was to drive the truck safely to different destinations, take care of the truck, and see that it was free from accidents. Secondly, he was given the task of doing business so that Bipin, the owner, could recover his investment, repay the loan, and make profit. In both cases, the proprietor, Bipin, has the right to question the driver for not meeting the specified outcome. Either way, the driver is accountable. If some damage or breakdown happens to the lorry, the driver will be questioned. Similarly, if the driver fails to generate income, he will also be held responsible. To increase profit and pay off debts, the owner instructs the driver to carry more than the truck's capacity of 10 tons, even up to 15 tons. The driver is unable to question the owner's demand and is left with a difficult situation where he must comply with the demands of the owner. Both ways, the driver is made responsible, which denotes that it's a trap, a catch-22 situation. Now, let's apply this analogy to humans. All parents play the role of the self. Let's refer to Bipin, the owner of the truck, as the self, and the driver is the survival mechanism that protects and safeguards the body at all times. Our human body is just like a truck, which is dependent on the survival mechanism and the self for its existence. Just like the driver of the truck, the survival mechanism is bestowed with the responsibility of protecting the child and safeguarding its body from any harm. As the owner of the truck sets rules and regulations for the driver, the self, parents, lays down the instructions for the survival mechanism to follow. It does not have the freedom to do things independently. The driver is also responsible for getting returns on investment, the truck. Similarly, the survival mechanism's job is to prepare the body and also fulfill the desires of the parents, the self. The mechanism is accountable for getting returns by using the body-mind combinations to fulfill the self's expectation. Either way, the survival mechanism is in a trap, a catch-22. The case study of Amit mentioned in the earlier podcast is a perfect example of a mother who demands that Amit fulfill all her expectations. Survival mechanism is sandwiched between protecting the body and meeting the expectations of the parents, the self. Our body is like any other object and depends on others for its survival, with hardly any say of its own. The survival mechanism is doing its best to strike a balance, which is not possible to do so when it operates as a slave to a master. We need to acknowledge that our birth itself puts us in a catch-22 situation. We are brought into this world to fulfill the desires of our parents and others with a preset agenda that we are unaware of. This means that our purpose is predefined and we are not born free, but with a predetermined outcome, which is in itself a trap. To understand this better, you can refer to podcast 1 and 2. Unfortunately, this important fact is often ignored and goes unnoticed. If the mechanism fails to meet the specified outcome of the self, some emotions will trigger within the person that will communicate that the performance is below the expectations. Thus, it has to work hard and prove. If not, the fear and uncertainty of survival creeps in. Going back to Jimmy, as long as the child does the schoolwork and also writes 2 pages to improve his handwriting, the mother is pleased with him. But if Jimmy starts to play computer games instead, and when the mother realizes what is happening, she snatches the video games and also punishes Jimmy. The mother has disrupted Jimmy's goal, sabotaged his happiness, and also reprimanded him. In Jimmy's case, he wants to play. He is secretly doing it behind his mother's back. Play is Jimmy's goal, but not in alignment with the mother's outcome. Therefore, there is a conflict of goals, and the mother, being the authority, always wins. She is the parent, and as Jimmy grows bigger, she continues to play a role in Jimmy's life as a self. In Jimmy's adulthood, there could be certain goals not in alignment with the parents or parents' doctrine, which will lead to self-sabotage. Let's take a case study so that you understand more about the self-sabotage. Lately, I had a young film personality, Sonia, visited me. She was in a relationship with another young famous film star. Sonia had had a few failed relationships in the past, but was able to move on with her life with some bitterness. But this time it was different. She was entangled in an emotional hangover. The man would not take her calls nor return them. Mostly, there was avoidance even of the text messages. At some level, she knew that it was over for her. It was time for her to move on. In the past, she could do that, but this time, she was depressed and sobbing. Even though the issue was connected to the boy, the real issue was something else. Her mother was her guide and a personal assistant, PA, who was managing her professional activities. In Sonia's life, she was also dominant self. She would be curious to know about her personal life. Her mother knew about her past relationship breakups and had warned her about the current one. Sonia continued against her mother's warning, and now what she had predicted was turning out to be true. Sonia had a strong belief that whatever her mother predicted usually happens. Now, Sonia was scared to relate the issue to her mother and to reveal the truth because she had warned her about the boy. The prophecy turned out to be true. Her mother noticed that she was depressed and not communicating much. She had tried to probe, but Sonia had avoided the topic, and there was also a showdown in that contact. The worst part about her mother was that she would taunt and hint at her about her previous breakups. Many times she had belittled her for her past mistakes. How is Sonia's case a self sabotage? In the earlier podcast, I had spoken about core beliefs. Let me further elaborate on the beliefs. Here are some examples of how beliefs are formed. The mother looks at the dark black clouds in the sky and says to the child, "It's going to rain." Shortly, it starts to rain. The mother looks at the pregnant cat and says to the little child, "She is going to have small cats." Shortly, small kittens are born. The little child starts to believe in the mother, and whatever she predicts turns out to be true. From past experiences, Sonia's survival mechanism knows that whatever the mother predicts comes to be true. The mother, being a dominant self, has a hold over Sonia beyond her conscious awareness. The belief has been there in her since childhood, and it cannot be bypassed. Even though she wants to go against the mother's beliefs and have a relationship with the man, it falls apart. The self is a dominant mechanism that controls the survival mechanism. Thus, Sonia's survival mechanism make the prophecy come true. The self unconsciously sabotages the relationship beyond her awareness. Sonia is a partly wanted child, and her mother plays a dominant role in the form of the self that controls her beliefs and decision making. Her survival mechanism unconsciously complies with the demands of her mother and tries to fulfill all the beliefs planted by her. In the previous podcast, I mentioned Manoj being raised in a vegetarian family. He avoids eating non-veg, even though his friends can be enjoying the dishes. Logic and reasons tell him that if others can eat it and enjoy non-veg, that means he can also have it. If he applies his reasons and consumes non-veg against the family's belief, then he starts to feel guilty. Shortly, he starts to vomit and feel unwell. How did he know to feel guilty? Who made him feel guilty? Where does this guilt come from? The self, parents, have laid down the doctrine, rules and regulations that have to be followed. If Manoj fails to obey the rules, it triggers the mechanism of fear of survival, leading to guilt. The first thing is to identify what is causing the self-sabotage. Lately, I had a young lady came in for therapy for anxiety. There was a relationship issue that was addressed. But a few days later, she experienced anxiety and booked another session. In the second session, she realized that she had issues with her boss, who was finding fault with her work. She had difficulty tackling her boss, which was causing anxiety. Self sabotage can be a complex issue, and relying solely on logic and reason to solve the problem may not be effective. The solution that seems obvious may not work because the root of the problem lies in the beliefs and the constructs that were not created by you. These beliefs and constructs were likely instilled by your parents and other influential people in your life, which I refer to as self. To overcome self sabotage, it is necessary to update these misconstrued beliefs at the level of the self. It's important to understand that all beliefs we hold come from our past experiences. This means that any self sabotage behavior we exhibit is also rooted in our past. To overcome these behaviors, we need to update our past experiences. Unfortunately, most of us are unaware of the events that has shaped our beliefs. It's not that our brains don't remember, but it can be difficult to access these memories on our own. It's not possible for me to provide solutions to your self-sabotage in a podcast because each case is unique and different. However, there are some indicators that can help you identify when you are caught up in a self-sabotage. 1. Emotion. Negative emotions such as depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, and panic are signs of some self-sabotage currently happening in your life. 2. Stress. When you are dealing with stress, which means your survival mechanism is trying to please the self and fulfill its expectation, but finding it hard to meet the challenges. 3. Psychosomatic illnesses. It could be headaches, migraines, irritable bowel, vomiting, etc., which are signs that self-sabotage is in progress. 4. Personal accident. Most of the accident on the personal level are directly connected to self-sabotage. 5. Confusion and indecisiveness. When you don't have a clarity on what decisions to make and how to go about an issue, that means you are confused. This means the issue is not within the ambit of your conscious understanding. Thus, it's a self-sabotage. When you find yourself caught in the self-sabotage trap, the best course of action is to pause and refrain from dwelling on the issue. Instead, focus your attention on something constructive, practice meditation, or seek the help of a therapist. Overthinking about a problem will only aggravate the problem since it is not within the ambit of your conscious mind. Understanding the survival mechanism and the self and how they work can greatly improve your ability to cope with daily challenges. Even small updates to your unconscious mind can help you overcome obstacles and create opportunities for a more fulfilling life with greater freedom. To listen to more podcasts and to watch YouTube videos, please feel free to visit my website at www.livingwithfreedom.com. I also have 2 books available for purchase on various platforms: Stop Surviving, Start Living with Freedom, and The Self Decoded. The better you know who you are and the working of your internal mechanism, the more likely you will experience joy and peace. In the upcoming podcast, you will have an opportunity to learn something new and unique. In the meantime, I encourage you to look for opportunities to express gratitude for everything around you. See you next week.